So, if you're a normal person, you likely haven't heard that some irrelevant browser game that used to get 40k concurrent players actually got revived twice. The first reboot, Surviv.io, was a one-to-one copy of the game assembled by the most dedicated team of fans that replicated the game from before the Kongregate acquisition. And it's actually pretty well done. I actually enjoy playing the game a lot. However, did you know that Kongregate themselves actually revived the original game? Despite Kong ruining the game that we all came to love 5 years ago, they somehow managed to amass 100 concurrent users. Which isn't crazy, but Servet manages about 300 to 400 CCU at peak, which comparatively, that's like a quarter of their player base playing some random vibe-coded game, which is weird. I decided to play a game of Kong Surviv and see why anyone would want to play a game that openly vibe codes their game updates. Instantly, right off the bat, you just see the most random box texture failure right there. I also have a few hypotheses about why some people may prefer the plated version of the game, and it actually has to do with a little bit with the failures of Survive.io. I was looking around the Discord and came across a message that essentially said, the game felt really laggy and the dev should work on optimizing the game. This is nonsense. Just for one, Survive and Surviv have the exact same optimizations. Survive just has client-side player rotation off by default. However, they're just placebo anyways and don't actually affect anything except how choppy your player spins around. In fact, you can even argue that player rotation interpolation actually desyncs your client from the servers more often and could cause more no-regs to your opponent. Aside from that, the issue might actually just come down to ping. I'll say all I want about the fuck textures and the clear lack of care into bug testing, but the game feels like I'm running on 40 to 60 ping, because the server locations are likely more central than the Surviv.io servers. This is because the servers are in Montreal, Canada. This is possibly one of the worst server locations that solely represent the entirety of the North American continent. Everything that happens in the game happens server side, not on your end. This means that you need a good connection to keep in sync with the server to reduce stutters on your end. If you are geographically farther from the server location, it becomes increasingly harder to maintain a stable connection, which would lead to the game feeling like it runs absurdly bad with constant stutters or even freezes. For that reason, Kong's game ends up feeling like it runs way better than Survive.io, depending on where you're located relative to the server locations. For instance, I have a much better time playing on the Kong version of the game purely because of the fact that I'm closer to the Kong servers than the Survive.io server. Which is also why I imagine that the 100 people who end up playing in these 20 to 30 player lobbies also prefer to keep playing this version of the game rather than the more popular and laggy version of Survive. Ping and lag easily makes or breaks your enjoyment of the game, and I imagine that if Survive.io traded out Montreal servers for a location more central, such as Chicago, that the game would be much more enjoyable for people across the United States.